final step in our touch-up stage of our model is to go in and apply all of our modifiers. I want to be able to continue to sculpt on my turtle and add new details into the mesh itself. Well, these modifiers only work at the object level. The moment I go over into my sculpt mode, those modifiers get turned off, and most importantly, the shrink wrap modifier gets turned off. All that information has just been deactivated the moment we go into sculpt mode. So we need to look at a way that preserves all of this information into the mesh itself. And this is a good practice because we want to go in and start reducing the complexities of our scene and produce a model that is just real clean and efficient. I like the information that the shrink wrap modifier has presented to us, but it's now time to move forward. This is a great opportunity to save a new version of your project file. What we are about to perform is a destructive edit. It's a point of no return. The moment we apply our shrink wrap modifiers or any modifier to our object, we lose the ability to go in and activate and deactivate. I always like having a version of my model where all these modifiers are still present just in case I need to go back in time, that information is still there. So we need to apply both the shrink wrap modifier and the multi-res modifier into the mesh itself. Now, the reason we're going to do this is just to make it a little bit more clean and a little bit more efficient inside of our entire system. And let's go ahead and do it real fast. Now, we've got to be in object mode in order for this to start. So make sure you're in object mode. Otherwise, these options in the modifier pull-down menu are not going to be there. And you can find the process of applying our modifiers right here inside of this little drop-down arrow. Of course, all of these are going to allow us to turn them on and off, or we can turn the visibility of this modifier in the render engine on and off. But we want to apply it, which is going to bake the influence of the modifier into the mesh itself. Let's do it. And now, with the shrink wrap modifier applied, we're ready to rock and roll. So if we go into sculpt mode, now we can continue sculpting on top of this mesh, which is pretty neat. Now, there's a lot of information in here that we don't necessarily need. If you look very carefully, the multi-resolution modifier is doing a darn good job of subdividing our mesh. There's a lot going on in here. But, however, we're subdividing pretty much everything, even down in here in the toes, and perhaps we want to start kind of influencing this a little bit more and reducing the polygonal load on our scene itself. If you look at the geometry here, man, it's just a pretty dense field of polygons across the entire surface, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I want to have a base mesh, a level 0, that truly is representative of what I want the model to be and what I want the model to look like inside of our texturing application. If we were to put this down to 0, this is a little bit closer to what I want. Okay, this is what I want my level 1 or level 0 to be. Yeah, I think this is a little too low res as I look at the mesh itself. Let's turn off the wireframes. Yeah, some of that really great information that was pulled from the shrink wrap modifier is being lost on this resolution of the mesh. And because we have good topology, and because we have good loops, we can then preserve all of this information by applying our multi-resolution modifier into the scene itself. Now, the multi-resolution modifier is great. I like it a lot, and it works extraordinarily well. Right now, it's producing a result of about 22,000 polygons, and I think that's what I want my target to be. I want this density of my polygonal mesh to be level 0, if you will. I want this quality to be what is going to end up over into my scene in Substance Painter or in the Unreal Engine. So I'm going to apply my multi-resolution modifier to the model here. That way I can very quickly go in and continue to work with this in other applications. If we were to leave it like this level, man, that's like 89,000 polygons. This is right on the border of an unusable asset inside of the rest of the production pipeline. But a character model with 22,000 faces, that's pretty appropriate, and I think this is where I'm going to want to live. Now we have a couple choices here that we can do. We can either delete the higher subdivisions, which is now going to turn this into level 1, which is fine. Or we could just apply, let's go back into object mode. We can apply Let's do it. Apply the multi-resolution modifier. And now it's no longer a factor inside of my scene. And what you see is what you get. These are the polygons This is what we're going to serve, or what is going to serve as the base mesh of my object itself. Of course, naturally, we can continue to sculpt on top of this and add new information. And I think that's what I'm going to do to get a lot of the finer details. Let's just delete the modifier. Let's do a quick spot check to make sure that all of my UVs are alive and kicking. And it looks as though they are. I always just like to double check to make sure that none of that information was lost in the process. We toil and create our UVs very tirelessly, so making sure that all of that information is alive and kicking inside of the scene is really helpful. It's one of the reasons I like working with Blender so much. It does a great job of preserving all of this information throughout the production pipeline. Now we have a really great mesh that we can go in and sculpt on using the wonderful tools inside of Blender. A solid base mesh with clean UVs that we can start to polish and finalize inside of our high-resolution sculpting workflow.